beautiful setting this is. I thank you for the privilege of speaking to you at Fort Monroe today. As a former member and vice chairman of the Fort Monroe Authority, it's always a pleasure to be here at this site. Thank you all for being here today to commemorate 400 years of American history. For those of you from out of state, welcome to Virginia. It's great to be here today with former governors, now Senators Mark Warner and Tim Kaine, former governors McDonald and Belize. I also want to recognize Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, Attorney General Mark Herring, Congressman Bobby Scott, Congresswoman Elaine Luria, House of Delegates Speaker Kurt Cox, members of our Legislative Black Caucus, and other elected officials. I want to thank everyone who has worked so hard to make this commemoration a reality. Fort Monroe Authority Director Glenn Odom, Fort Monroe Authority Board of Trustees Chairman Jim Moran, members of the Fort Monroe Authority Board, Fort Monroe National Monument Superintendent Terry Brandon, National Park Service, Kathy Spangler, Nancy Rodriguez, and the team from American Evolution. I'd also like to thank the Hampton 2019 Commemorative Commission for all the hard work they have done around these events. We are here today for a commemoration and a reckoning. Today is a time to reckon with the fact that 400 years ago, enslaved Africans arrived for the first time on Virginia shores. Like you and me, they had lives and families they would never see again. Just up the river in Jamestown, a few weeks earlier, white land-owning men had come together to establish a system of representative government. But that system did not represent all of the people who arrived here at Old Point Company. People whose skin looked different than mine. That government did not represent them during 246 years of slavery. It did not represent them through nearly 100 years of Reconstruction and Jim Crow terror and discrimination. And in many ways, it struggles to represent them today. That is the truth. And that is what we must reckon with as we move forward. How do we tell the full and true story of our past 400 years? How do we do so with honor and dignity for people whose honor and dignity were taken away from them? Who should tell the story? And how do we learn from those lessons as we move forward? Ida B. Wells wrote that the way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. If we are going to begin to truly right the wrongs of our 4 centuries of history, if we are going to turn the light of truth upon them, we have to start with ourselves. Over the past several months, as I have met with people around the state and listened to their views on disparities and inequities that still exist today, I've had to confront some painful truths. Among those truths was my own incomplete understanding regarding race and equity. I have learned a great deal from those discussions, and I have more to learn. But I also learned that the more I know, the more I can do. You see, for too long, the burden has been on individuals and communities of color to lead these discussions. But if more of us have these hard conversations and truly listen and learn from them, we'll be better able to shine that light of truth. Because the eyes can't see what the mind doesn't know. We can start those conversations at places like this, Fort Monroe, the ground where the first enslaved Africans landed. This is also the same ground where the end of slavery began. It was here where enslaved people sought refuge and were granted it, a decision that eventually led to emancipation. General Butler's contraband decision has been hailed by Ed Ayers, a nationally known historian of the American South and a member of the Fort Monroe Authority, as the greatest moment in American history. Virginia is the place where enslaved Africans first landed and where American representative democracy was born. Virginia is the place where emancipation began and the Confederate capital was located. Virginia is the place where schools were closed under massive resistance rather than desegregate and allow black children to attend. And it is the state that elected the nation's first African-American governor. Virginia is a place of contradictions and complexity. We take a step forward and often a step back, and we have to acknowledge that. We have to teach that our complexity to our children and often to our adults. We are a state that for too long has told a false story of ourselves. The story we tell is insufficient and inadequate, especially when it comes to black history. We must remember that black history is American history. Earlier today, I signed an executive directive to establish a commission on African American history education in our Commonwealth. But this commission will review our education standards, instructional practices, content, and resources currently used to teach African American history in our Commonwealth. We want to make sure our students develop a full and comprehensive understanding of the African American voices that contribute to our story. But that is not the only thing that we can do. When we look back at events of 1619, or 1861, or 1964 when the Civil Rights Act was signed, we often look at them as history, frozen in time, or locked in a book, relics of the past. We memorize dates, but not connections. We don't teach the themes that appear in our history over and over again. We often fail to draw the connecting lines from those past events to our present day. But to move forward, that is what we must do. We know that racism and discrimination aren't locked in the past. They weren't solved with the Civil Rights Act. They didn't disappear. They merely evolved. They're still with us. In the disparities we see in education attainment and school suspension rates, in maternal and neonatal mortality for black and white mothers, in our courts and prisons, and in our business practices. through 400 years of American history, starting with the enslavement of Africans, through Jim Crow, massive resistance, and now mass incarceration, black oppression has always existed in this country, just in different forms. The racism continues not just in isolated incidents, but as part of a system that touches every person and every aspect of our lives, whether we know it or not. And if we're serious about righting the wrong that began here at this place, we need to do more than talk. We need to act. The commission I mentioned earlier is just one action. My administration is taking bold steps to right historical inequities in education, in our health system, and in access to business opportunities.
Amen.
We established a commission to examine racial inequities in Virginia law. We have set a goal to eliminate racial disparities in maternal and neonatal mortality by 2025. I signed an executive order to advance equity for our small women, minority, and veteran-owned businesses, including a statewide disparity study. And we are working to reduce evictions. A few weeks ago, I was here at Fort Monroe to announce the removal of letters from the arch that once celebrated the President of the Confederacy. Jefferson Davis was charged with treason and was imprisoned here at Fort Monroe, a traitor to his country. And I believe it is no coincidence that in the same year that Virginia enacted massive resistance as official state policy, that arch went up in his honor. To have a monument glorifying a person who worked to maintain slavery on the same site on which enslaved Africans both first arrived here and were later freed is not just inappropriate, it is offensive and it is wrong. Is one way we can act to better tell the true story here in Virginia. And I'm pleased and proud to announce today another important step in how we represent the full and true story of our Commonwealth. Last year, I requested and the General Assembly agreed to allocate $500,000 toward the first African Landing Memorial Art Project here at Fort Monroe. In partnership with the National Park Service, the Fort Monroe Foundation, and Project 1619 led a national search for an artist who could create this memorial art project at Old Point Comfort. The art project will be dedicated to the first landing of African people here on these shores. Importantly, the artist will engage with the public to ensure that the community has the chance to express their opinion on what this memorial project means to them and what experiences should be included in the design. I'm delighted that the artist for the Fort Monroe African Landing Memorial Art Project is here with us today. Please welcome Mr. Brian Owens. Would you please stand? Contribute to this site and the telling of this important American story. On this very day last year, I was at the Tucker Family Cemetery, a cemetery named after the first documented child of African descent born in English-speaking North America. William Tucker's parents, Anthony and Isabel, were among those who were brought here to Old Point Comfort in 1619. Like too many African American cemeteries, the Tucker Family Cemetery had fallen victim to neglect. But it is also a testament to revival and restoration. Family members and interested groups are working to restore that cemetery. And I want to recognize and thank Delegate Dolores McQuinn for her work on this issue. Delegate McQuinn. In that restoration work and in the events here this weekend, I see steps forward. I see us working to acknowledge the wrongs and the evils done in the past and in the present. Because while we cannot change the past, we can use it and learn from it. When we know more, we can do more. I know more, and as your governor, I will do more. Legacy of Virginia's racist past and acknowledge that it continues to shape our present, we can and must continue to act to improve the future. We must all work to tell our full and true story. It is our job, all of us that make up this diverse society, to ensure that when the next generation looks back, a generation that is hopefully more inclusive than we have been, they see a more accurate narrative, one that tells the truth and includes everyone. May God bless Fort Monroe. May God bless our Commonwealth of Virginia.